I thought I'd find a chink in your armor there.
You sure did. I haven't a clue.
My story is they're always the champions.
That's your story.
That's my story.
And you're sticking to it.
That's right.
All right. Let's see. This question is one that you've already addressed in your message, R.C., or I believe it was yours. But we need to continue it. Is there a connection between postmodern thought and the emergent church movement? Let's explore that again.
The emergent church movement typically will pitch itself as soft postmodernism. But like postmodernists, they often find themselves between a really bad rock and a really bad hard place. Because in order to have any connection to postmodernism, we can talk about the depths and the nuances, but the bottom line is no truth. And to try to have a less modernist, certain presentation of the truth while holding on to some level of truth is an impossible thing. And so really, it's sort of like, if I can say it this way, it's like with Arminians. There's a lot of similarities there. An Arminian is a person who says, yes, I believe in the sovereignty of God, and yes, it's up to me.
And what?
Yes, it's up to me. Or yes, I depend upon the finished work of Christ alone, and yes, it's up to me. And you have to try to push them to one place or the other because it's inconsistent and incoherent. And the same thing is true of the emergent church movement. You have people who will describe themselves this way because they'll affirm the things that I talked about the Bible being a story. And there are things that they don't like about modernism. I hope we're all enemies of modernism. But that doesn't make us postmodern. It doesn't make us emergent. So if you really, what defines it, I believe, is the refusal to affirm what God says without ambiguity.
But this movement's still relatively small. It's growing, of course, but it's only one of many movements spawned by modern, quote, evangelicalism. I talked just yesterday with a colleague who mentioned that his growing reluctance to define himself as an evangelical, because even though liberalism and the mainline churches has kind of been defeated, it's basically moved.
Right.
It hasn't been defeated. It's just moved from the mainline into the evangelical community, so that the term is again suffering the death of 1,000 qualifications. What do you guys think about that?
Well, the whole emerging phenomenon is mixed, like postmodernism is mixed. I mean, for one thing, no one has a brand name on postmodernism, and so there are different variants. There are different variants on the emerging thing. In fact, Emergent was an effort actually to brand it so they could actually trademark it. That's copyrighted. But, you know, the interesting thing is it really ranges from people who think of postmodernism as a mood, and these are recognizable by the 20-something pastors with the goatees and the square glasses that have candles lit in dark sanctuaries. That's part of it. But then it goes all the way over to hardline postmodernism. And there really is very hardline postmodernism in some of them. You know, one of the most influential in this movement is Brian McLaren. His book is entitled, erroneously, Generous Orthodoxy. It's neither generous nor orthodox, because the only orthodoxy that is generous is biblical orthodoxy, and it's generous because God is gracious to us in revealing himself to us. But this idea that you can be Calvinist and Arminian and Catholic and Protestant and liberal and conservative and Wesleyan and Reformed and all these, because these are all his polarities, that's an absolute refutation of any honest approach to truth or to biblical content or to God's self-revelation in Scripture. And basically, it is a form of drinking postmodernism and allowing the culture to set the direction. Now, lest we sound naive here, we're all wearing clothes, and we're in a building that has architecture. So in other words, it's not like any of us are devoid of culture. As R.C. was speaking very well of, you know, knowing the water in which you're swimming. But when we're looking at the open embrace of postmodernism all across that spectrum, I think there's a great deal to be very concerned about there. And especially as you get into the explicit refusal to answer the truth question, you're looking at postmodernism squarely in the face, and it's incompatible with the Christian gospel.
Ravi.
By the way, Al has got one of the finest critiques on Brian McLaren's Generous Orthodoxy, which I have downloaded before and used. You must follow up on that. There's another angle of this which I will address, and that is that these emergent churches are going to produce a generation of people who actually will not be able to handle the challenge of Islam and other major world religions. They will not be able to handle it. And my wife and I were having dinner with a very notable gentleman I shall leave unnamed, but he says he communicates to more people across television than anybody else in the world on any given day. And I won't say too much more, but we're sitting across the table, and he said he'd just been talking to a Muslim scholar and came away quite impressed with the fact that he had not known that there was really not that much of difference between Islam and Christianity. So my wife and I were having dinner with him, and my wife is very, very well controlled in her expressions, and I thought she was going to choke at that moment. I had to just turn over to her and calm her down. I said, why did you say that? He said, well, he talked about all the points of agreement we have and so on. I said, well, let's go from here. They don't believe we have the Bible, that the New Testament is lost. They don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. They don't believe he died on the cross. They don't believe he rose again from the dead. They don't believe he's coming again as king. Do you think there's a difference between what they believe and what we do? I said, they don't have the gospel. But this is the problem. The Muslims have shown us up. We don't know what we believe. When they present their ideas to an average young Christian going to one of these emergent churches, one of the most prominent of those churches draws about 20,000 on Sunday. You can read his book. In that entire book of having a better life now and best life now and so on, there is not one mention of the cross in it. There is no gospel there. And so, along with all the other compromises, we're going to be shown up. And the whole idea of RC here, you can't show a counterfeit if you do not know what the genuine is. And I think that's a big price we are going to pay very dearly as a result of this kind of lack of proper teaching.
Just recently, Ravi, I saw a television preacher whose name I won't mention to protect the guilty. He made this statement, and it takes a lot to shock me in this day and age. But he said, I don't care who you are, what you have done, or who you have done it with, God is not angry at you.
Oh.
And what does that have to do with the New Testament view of God, of sin, of the cross? I mean, why would anybody need to come to Christ if God's not angry? And where the gospel talks us about being saved from the wrath that is to come. But we don't believe in the wrath of God anymore. That's something that has to go. It's incompatible with postmodern thinking.